I'm shoulder to shoulder with newlyweds, bachelorette parties, and old people that smell like cheese. Well, it's wintertime right now in Ohio, so we just get stupid bored. Nothing exciting's happening. We're just doing whatever. We're drinking beer. We're just living. I have nothing to do. Everything's buried in snow out in the storage lot, and it's around Christmas time, so nothing's selling because everyone's buying Christmas gifts. So I'm online looking for something out in Vegas to buy. I was like, flights to Vegas are cheap. I'm just gonna fly out there and drive back. I'll stop on all the stuff along the northern route of Cannonball that I never get to stop at. So I'm like, okay, sweet. So it's early in the morning. It's about 8 a.m. for me. I'm on Facebook Marketplace looking. I was gonna buy a Ford Ranger and drive it back. Just a rust-free four-wheel drive, something cheap that I can just triple my money on because they're stupid cheap out there. And on the marketplace ad, right underneath the ad, there's the viewers also looked at this, and this '91 Land Cruiser popped up. Low miles, it was a desert truck. I'm looking at the price. I'm like, wow, this is worth flying out to buy. So I contact the dude, and he just got off work, and I call him. It's about 9:30 in the morning when I get a hold of him, and he's like, yeah, it's a great truck. I don't need it. And I'm like, boom, I can be there at 3:30 because it's already looking at flights. A lot of times you get these feelings where the deal's not going to happen, which happens a lot to me. And then magically it pulls through. This dude texts me. He's like, hey, I have a guy coming from Utah right now with cash for the truck as is. And I'm like, I already paid for my flight. My bag's packed. I'm ready to go. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll get back to you. This is a dumb opportunity. I'm bored. I just need an adventure. So I grab my old Army backpack and I just jump in the Uber and I go out to the airport and I get on the plane. And I'm on the worst Spirit Airlines flight to Vegas I've ever heard of in my life. When I came back from Amelia Island the same year, my flight was empty. But right now, I'm shoulder to shoulder with newlyweds, bachelorette parties, and old people that smell like cheese. My plane lands, it goes perfect. And I'm sitting here looking at other vehicles to buy in Vegas because what if this dude doesn't show up? And he's lost around. He's like, oh yeah, I'm driving around the airport. I'm like, oh, this dude's probably just pulling my leg. This dude from Utah already came and bought this Land Cruiser. Like a cowboy out of the Mirage, this dude just pulls up within this sea of rental cars. We go back to his place to do all the deal and stuff. I got the cash in my pocket. Wow, this deal was actually legit. Something came up that he's like, we're talking about YouTube, and he's like, yeah, I watch VINwiki, and I do the whole Superman thing. I just unzip my jacket and be like, you mean this VINwiki? Then my lime green shirt on. He's like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, you know what? I did know you from somewhere. And that was the first time someone actually recognized me from VINwiki. And actually the only time. The sun's starting to set, and I'm like, I got to get on the road. So I am like, dude, I got to get going. And I look over the truck. I make sure it's good to run. And that's when I head east. I get on the freeway and I go up and I'm heading towards Colorado because I want to go through Glenwood Springs because on 70, you're flying past the beautiful Glenwood Springs and it's just such a majestic city in the mountains with the hot springs and everything. And that was my goal to get there. I'm just chugging along and the first mountain pass I hit, this truck falls flat on its face. I'm on the side of the road crawling up this mountain and I'm getting semis passing me in low gear. I stayed in Utah for the night. And the next morning it ran fine. And then I continued on into Colorado and I go out, explore the city. You do the hot springs and the hot caves. It was just amazing. And the next morning I get in the Land Cruiser and I got no brakes. I got nothing. I had this massive vacuum leak and I just thought, I'm like, wow, this is probably the coldest temperature this truck's been in since it was new. It was a Vegas truck. It lived on the Air Force Base for 90% of its life. I was like, crap. And that's when I started crawling up the mountains. I think the highest I reached was about 14,000 elevation in this thing. As soon as I got down out of there, I look in my rearview mirror and see another Land Cruiser. It was the newer V8 model of it, but the same body style. And this dude just cruises with me for about 50 miles down out of it. He's got his fancy ARB bumper, his tent on the roof, and the big bumpers and jacks. And this dude just does this to me as he finally gives up and passes me. I'm coming into Denver, and I'm driving, and the truck just starts to run better. And I just kept heading east. I'm finally hitting above 65 miles an hour. I hit 70, hit the cruise control. I got the window down the entire time. And then I look up and I just see this giant sign, and it's for Kansas. And the only thing I know about Kansas is Toto and Tyler Hoover. I knew I had to pick up John Ficarra at the Cleveland International Airport because he had just bought Ultra Beige on the Dream Car Exchange, VINwiki, charity, car flipping, blah, 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 blah thing. But you guys all know what I'm talking about. So I just kept trucking. I had a couple days left because I spent Friday night in Colorado, and I was just going to drive until the sunset. So I end up somewhere on the other side of Kansas. I can't even remember what town it was, but I was just exhausted. And I pull off the freeway to a Motel 8. And I don't even think I parked in a parking spot. I parked under a light because the thing didn't lock. Because something was wrong with the locks on it. And I'm like, wow, this is horrible. So I park under this giant light and I walk in, and this dude barely speaks English and gives me a room, and I buy a package of Famous Amos and a Coca-Cola, and I go to my room and I fall asleep mid-drink, and I woke up to it everywhere. Woke up at 11:30 to slamming doors. And then I fall back asleep and I wake up about 11:45, and it's people yelling and screaming, someone pounding at my door. And I wasn't going to the door, and it eventually stopped. And then fast forward about 10 minutes later, the whole place is just lit up with red and blues. The police stormed the Motel 8 I was at because I guess there was prostitution going on in there and drug deals and all kinds of stuff, because that chain of hotels is just really sketchy no matter when you stay there. I finally fall asleep and I wake up and I get back in the Land Cruiser. I just keep chugging. And I'm just cruising along, and my goal was to make it to Indianapolis to see Travis Bell. Because I was like, dude, when I come through, we're going to go get some ribs. We got to do this. So I stop at Travis Bell's house and stuff, and we see all the crazy stuff he has going on. And we went out. We had a blast that night. And we came back, and I slept in the world famous Travis Bell VINwiki bed. And first thing at sunrise, I hit the road again because I knew I had to be back in Cleveland to pick up the car at 2:30. So I get back and I pick up the car. We go out to Doug's place, switch cars, and we just have a blast. I'll have a blast that night. And I finally get the truck home at I think it was about 11:30 at night, when I just rumble into my driveway. And it was great. It was perfect. And I just did this awesome trip in one of my dream vehicles, and I loved it. I didn't want to sell it, so I just ended up just driving it. Fast forward about 3 weeks later, I'm at the bar. I just start not feeling good. I'm with a group of friends, and I drank this one girl's drink who left. It was bought for her. She never did anything. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, I just don't feel good. And that's all I remember. I guess I walked down to my normal place I go to and drink, and I bought a beer. I took a sip out of it, and I did a shot. And everyone's like, my bartender was the friend. And I'm like, she's like, you don't look right. Are you all right? And I guess I said, I'm fine. And I walked back to where I parked the truck, and the truck wasn't sitting there. At that instant, I just go stone cold sober, and I just freak out. I thought someone stole my Toyota. And I run, the tow yard's right around the corner, so I walked over there. I'm like, did you guys just tow a Land Cruiser? It's a big maroon, just big, massive SUV. And he's like, we didn't tow anything, dude. And that's when I start freaking out. And I'm like, I call my boss. I'm like, hey, can you come pick me up? The Land Cruiser got stolen with dealer tags on it. So we go up, I go get the title, I go to the police station to start filing a report. I'm like, they go home with your kids, I got this. My one buddy shows up and he's there with me, and I just start not feeling right. This cop walks out and he's like, how much you have to drink tonight? And I showed him my app on my phone. I was like, this is the bar I was at. Here's everything I did tonight. You're going to say that I'm drunk after $18.45 worth of beer in a 4-hour span. And it turns out I got roofied. The girl whose the drink was for got roofied by some dude who was at the bar. But I drank the drink so it didn't get wasted, and then I left to go home. And it was probably one of the most traumatizing events of my life. And we're sitting there for about an hour and a half, and this officer walks up. He's like, hey, where were you at tonight? And I was like, I parked at so-and-so now closed brewery. I was parked next to their van that's on 4 flat tires. I knew exactly where I parked. And if I wasn't okay to drive, I wouldn't have driven. Well, it turns out I did drive that night. I drove from that parking lot to the bar that I had my last drink at before I went home. And I was parked out back behind the building with all the windows down and the radio on still. And the key was, well, it's really funky ignition, so the key wasn't off all the way, but I could still pull it out and all the power would still be there, and it's since been fixed. The radio was going, it was playing the local country music station, and all the windows were down. And I don't remember this at all. At all. And we looked at the cameras, and I guess I got out of it and I walked to a whole other place I don't even remember being at that I don't even have a bar tab for. And it was a really crappy experience to do. And that was actually the last time I drove the truck. I didn't drive it again for about a couple weeks because it snowed. That's when we got our first snow. I'm like, I'm not driving this. It's just going to sit here. And since then the snow melted, I moved into my storage lot where I store everything getting ready for sale. And I just left it there. The best cars are the cars that give you the best stories. And even though this is a horrible story, it's still a good story at the same time. So I guess it was probably one of the best cars I ever owned. Because I can go out there right now and start it. And I can drive it across country without any worry.
Carly offers more assistance and functionality than standard OBD scanners. It's really a workshop level tool that gives you diagnostic capability to figure out what your car is trying to tell you. But beyond that, particularly for BMWs and Volkswagen products, Carly gives you the ability to code things into your car to customize it to your liking. If you went to a shop or a dealership, each of these codes might cost $50 or more. But with Carly, you can code unlimited things into compatible cars with their license. So check out the link in the description below, use VINwiki for a discount, and unlock your car's potential. You can also check used cars as you buy them for odometer discrepancies and mechanical issues. Carly is the perfect investment for anyone who cares about their cars.